Mussolini may appear laughable today, but how could a former card-holding socialist become the first fascist dictator of the 20th century? Mussolini began political life as a socialist activist and journalist. He was firmly anti-Catholic and anti-monarchy. He urged the population to support a socialist revolution. When World War I arrived, Mussolini urged the Italian people to join the war in an effort to prove Italy as a major world power. For this, Mussolini was kicked out of the Socialist Party. Mussolini joined the army. After a short time in action, he was severely wounded and released from service. Following World War I, Italy felt betrayed. Italy had been promised large land concessions from Austria, but received very little. This led to frustration with establishment politics and the government, which people saw as weak and infected. Taking advantage of the public's anger and frustration at the high casualties and small land gain from the war, Mussolini formed the Fascist Party. His platform was one of action, extreme nationalism, and the desire to regain the glory of the Roman Empire. For the militant wing of the new party, Mussolini recruited thousands of former soldiers. These black shirts terrorized and intimidated Mussolini's political enemies, mainly communists and democratic politicians. Industrial barons applauded Mussolini and his black shirts for oppressing communists, as they feared a communist revolution, as that had happened in Russia. As a result, they gave large donations to the party. The middle and peasant classes also supported Mussolini as an enemy of communism. Land prices had dropped during and after the war, so many had become landowners for the first time, and were afraid of communists seizing the land. With this large support base, Mussolini entered national politics. Mussolini joined the government election group in 1921, and the Fascist Party won its first 35 seats in parliament that same year. Mussolini did have to make some sacrifices. He stopped making anti-Catholic and anti-monarchy speeches. This made him a mainstream politician. Mussolini's next move towards power was the suppression of the Milan general strike in 1922. Using his infamous black shirts, he broke the strike and maintained law and order. The people had seen him in action and knew that they could trust him in a crisis. Later that year, in October, Mussolini and 50,000 black shirts staged the March on Rome in an attempt to overthrow the central government. The sitting government asked King Victor Emmanuel for emergency powers to quash the uprising. King Victor Emmanuel refused. The king was misled by reports that the fascists had already taken over other major cities. The king feared and wanted to avoid a civil war. The king was a very insecure man, and feared that if he was not compliant, he would be replaced by his cousin, the Duke of Aosta. On the 31st of October, the king appointed Benito Mussolini as Prime Minister of Italy. Mussolini now faced the challenge of dismantling a democracy. Mussolini first passed the Acerbo Law, with large coalition of parties. The law granted 66% of the power in parliament to the party that won at least 25% of all votes in an election. Mussolini now just had to win one last election. The black shirts worked to thwart any campaign efforts of opposition parties. A few months later, the election was decided. The fascists won 65% of the vote. The Acerbo Law was not needed in the end, but Mussolini got what he wanted. Over the next few years, Mussolini worked to outlaw all opposition parties. Another casualty of Mussolini consolidating power was the free press. The very thing he had fought for to preserve as a socialist, he destroyed as a fascist. Now, all newspapers had to be approved by the state. By the end of 1925, Mussolini had complete control of the nation. The final piece of society Mussolini did not control, however, was the church. So in 1929, he and the Pope signed the Lateran Treaty, establishing Catholicism as Italy's state religion. Mussolini now had complete societal control at every level. After years of preying on fear and frustration to gain power, he was Il Duce.